Welcome to Smart Branding, a podcast dedicated to branding, naming, and domain names. I'm Tatiana Bonneau, and with my guests, we try to help you create and grow strong, memorable, and meaningful brands online. I believe time is one of our most precious assets, and so I want to thank you in advance if you decide to spend the next 30 minutes with us. I promise to do my best to make those worth it. Let's go. So today my guest is Lary Sims. He's an author, screenwriter, and film director known for his work on Off the Grid and Off the Grid 2. He struggled with dyslexia as a child and overcame those challenges to pursue his passion in the film industry. We'll talk about filmmaking and his journey. Thank you for joining us, Lary. It's a pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Let's start with a bit of a background. Tell me a little bit about yourself and how did you get to Off the Grid?
Wow. Being that I'm 66 years old, it's been a long journey. I'm in excellent health. I take really good care of myself. That's one reason why I'm here today. Helps me to keep a very, very positive attitude, which you have to have here in the film industry. If you don't have that, it's very tough to do anything in the business. When I had a very tough time growing up as a kid. I was the victim of at the hands of a much older cousin of mine in a barn when I was a kid. And that weighed heavy on my mind when I was a young kid, but I've overgrown that and gone beyond it. But another thing that was really very difficult for me was I was dyslexic. You never do lose your dyslexia. I just learned how to cope with being dyslexic. I'm pretty gifted writer now, considering all. Off the Grid, I wrote the narration for it. I've written 4 books. So over time, I have just had to work. I have to work 10 times as hard as the average person does to be really good at writing and reading and comprehension. So it's been a long challenge, but I've noticed that the technology that we have today, with like Grammarly and all the different programs that are like Grammarly, I had learned how to write pretty well for that, but it's just another tool that makes it even easier for me now to be able to have without having to hire somebody to edit my work or look at it. I'll wash it through Grammarly or other similar platforms, and it really, really does help. But moving on to the film, how I got into making film was my wife was at home one day and she saw this advertisement on I believe it's on Nextdoor. Nextdoor is a popular site for people who want to keep up what's going on in the local community. And they said they were looking for people to interview about hope and happiness for a documentary film. And my wife said, you should apply for that because, you've written these books, and you've got a really, really interesting story to tell everything that you've been throughout your life. So I sent an email, and then a week or so later, I got a phone call from a guy. The guy's name was Jack. And we talked for a little bit. He said, well, I'd like to interview you for the film. I said, okay, great. He said, well, I'll be at your house. And he said, we set up a date. So I was expecting the guy to come in with a camera or something. They showed up with an 8-man film crew at my house. Oh. Lights, sound, makeup, the whole thing. I was really kind of blown away by this size crew coming for this interview. And the name of the film, and it's out now. I have seen it, but interestingly, once you get into film, and you make them, you really get tired of watching your stuff. You always want to move on to the next. It's out there, but I have no idea where Finding Happiness. I think it's on the Lifetime channel. Maybe I'm one of them. Excuse me. I'm not sure where it is, but it's out there somewhere, in one of the streaming services or subscription services. So there's so many of them now. But when Jack after we got through with the interview that evening, Jack asked me, I actually brought up to Jack that I had an idea to make a film. And, of course, he was kind of listening to me, and I'm sure he gets a lot of that. And he's a director. He's been in Hollywood for 12, 13 years. But he agreed to have a cup of coffee with me. And so about 2 weeks later, we sat down and had a cup of coffee, and I told him about this idea about making a film about off the grid, how to do off the grid living, about the philosophy of off the grid living was my story. I mean, there's a million people out there doing stories about how to do off the grid, how to build a solar system, how to build your house. And do I know how to do all those things? Sure, but it's the internet is overrun, and film and documentaries are overrun with that. So I want to talk about the philosophy. So he liked the concept. So we made a deal, and it was in early April of 2021. We shot a TV. We shot a pilot for the show, trying to generate some interest in it, and so it didn't. It didn't kind of take it post. Just doing the pilot, trying to generate revenue for it. So I decided to self-fund it, and then I raised the money myself, and then then one of the most interesting things that happened is Jack got sick, and he's 35 years old. He got very, very ill, and he was my only contact at that point, and I lost contact with him for a couple of weeks, and I'm in the middle of trying to get this film made, and then eventually he tells me that he has a heart condition, and he says, Larry said, I'm not going to be able to do this right now. If you're going to do it, and he knew I had some talent with behind the camera, and I'm a very resourceful guy, so you're going to have to do this yourself. We've talked about you're going to have to go out and you have to get the equipment and camera equipment and everything, and you're going to have to film this yourself. And he said, and so ultimately I found out that he had to have a heart valve replacement. He was quite ill. He almost passed. He was obviously very young. And so I told my wife, I said, you know what, I'm going to do this. I said, so I went out and bought the camera equipment, everything I needed, and lighting and everything. And I hired one other guy to help me with the lighting and stuff. And so I just go out and I'll start doing the interviews myself. And I said, now we'll figure out how we're going to get to market afterwards. I said, either I'm making the most expensive home movie in history, or else it's going to be a financial success. We'll just have to see. And so I spent about the next 4 months doing 52 interviews in 4 states. And then by that time, I was able to get a few emails to Jack. He was, he had surgery, had a heart valve replacement. And he said, you have to work with my partner, Alex, on doing the editing. But I'd had editing experience and a lot of experience with this kind of software. So I got a very, very sophisticated computer system, and I started editing the film myself. I'd actually done it. And so it was something that, believe it or not, this is going to sound crazy, but, I had, in years gone by, been in the cabinet business. And cabinet design software is very similar, believe it or not. I think I'm crazy when I say that. Similar to when you're dealing with editing software. And the reason why I knew it was because I'd done some editing, of small films that I'd done, nothing to this size. And I said, wow, that's kind of like the way you do it in the cabinet. It's pushing buttons and getting things done and having some creativity to it. So I worked on it and did all the rough edit. And I got Alex involved, and then Alex helped me with the final edit, or the finish edit. Then Jack finally got well enough again, and then he did the finishing touches on the film. And so when we got down to the point where we were done with the film, and then we went to marketplace with it. And Jack had relationships with a number of independent distribution companies. So we sent the film out to about 25 companies. 7 of them responded and wanted the film. The one that I went with was the one that I always wanted, which was Gravitas Ventures. They're a very, very well-known indie film. They do mainstream and they do indie film and mainstream as well. They've been quite successful. But they only do about 300. They only pick up about 300 films a year, so they don't take everything. So the film went in distribution August 2022, and revenues have been pretty good. It's on video on demand services, pretty much exclusively up until about the last month, and they've started putting on subscription services now. So viewership's going up quite a bit. It's you'd be surprised how many people are hesitant to spend $3 or $4 to rent a film or pay $8 or $9 to buy it. And the film's done much better on the subscription services than on video on demand. So yeah, that's the first film I have 3 other films that are one's in post production right now. We should have it ready. It's actually a TV pilot. It's called Fabrication Nation. We shot it here in Vegas about all the people involved in the entertainment industry, who the people that make it happen, the people who build the stages, build the props, and the designers. And
interesting.
Yeah. Really cool. And that one will be out in marketplace probably in May, and then Off the Grid 2 is being filmed. It's just about finished, but we've decided to add some footage. A lot of your viewers probably have heard of the TV show Alone. It's on the History Channel. It's in its 9th season. They take participants out into the wilderness and drop them off, and they're actually there for real by themselves until the last man standing. And I thought it'd be interesting to interview one of those guys about what their thoughts would be on Off the Grid living. And I'm talking to 2 of the. I'd rather not say who they are, but 2 of the. Got 2 of the guys who won. Out of that 9 years, 2 of the guys who won who expressed an interest in participating in Off the Grid 2. So one of the guys is up in somewhere in Alaska, and the other guy's in Montana. So we're planning on June picking up some footage with those guys about their Off the Grid experience and adding it to Off the Grid 2. So that's exciting. They're quite big. One of these gentlemen has actually been on Joe Rogan talking about his experience on Off the Grid. On the TV show Alone. So yeah, I've talked to both these guys 2 or 3 times, and they're willing to participate. And I'm excited about that. So yeah, that and there's one other that's been developed about the Kairos prison industry. I'm working on that with the Kairos International people. So yeah, a lot of different stuff going on.
Wonderful. And let's talk a little bit more about Off the Grid. Like, have you yourself done that? You said the film is focused more on the philosophy rather than the technicalities of how to do it. Why that of all things? Like how did you get to that?
When I was a kid, I grew up watching Davy Crockett and Daniel Boone on black and white TV here in the U.S. And I was fascinated with the mountains from the time I was a small child. And I started hiking in the mountains after I was a young adult. I took a job in California. I was living in Hermosa Beach, California. I lived there for about 5 years. And when I first got there, I was kind of bored. I'd go to the beach, and hang out, with people I was meeting and everything. But I always had this thing in the back of my mind. I wanted to have a cabin in the mountains. So I couldn't afford one back then. Didn't even know where I was going to build it or how I was going to afford it or where it was going to be. But I would go to the library and I would get sketching paper and a ruler and a pencil, and I would draw plans of the cabin that I had in my mind that I wanted to build one day. And I'm quite good at that. I had experience being a home builder at one point in my life, and so I can draw blueprints and stuff. So I did that. I drew it several different ways, but that was in the late 80s, and so I kept those blueprints all those years, and then I had been married and divorced in the 80s and didn't remarry until 2000. And after my wife and I married, we've been married for 22 years this year. I have 2 daughters from prior marriage, but now I have 2 daughters from this marriage, and they'll actually be 13 this Friday. My twin girls, 13 this year. But we decided to we were going to find some property and build this cabin I've been talking about. And so we got up on a Sunday morning in 2004, and we looked around for quite some time, but we drove to Utah, about 4 hours from where we live in Las Vegas. And we found a piece of property, and I just fell in love with it, bought the property, and 60 days later, we were building the cabin. And so I built the cabin myself. I had the foundation put in, but after that, I went vertical with the cabin. I have a lot of skills, carpentry, plumbing, electrical. So I built the place myself, and the cabin's been there, 18, 19 years now. And
Wow.
of course, we start going in April, but I just fell in love with the wilderness and always wanted it. And my cabin is completely off the grid. There's no power there. There's no water. I built the solar system myself. I harvest water off the roof for rainwater. I have very, very large underground storage tanks. And during the winter, the snow comes and it melts and it goes in the tank, and we run it through filtration systems. And we have to use satellite for telephone and for internet there. So, yeah, it was a lifelong dream to have it from the time I was a little kid.
Hmm. And do you feel, I think it kind of coincides with the pandemic, that heightened interest of people. How do you feel that's changed? And do you feel that will stay, people being more and more interested in like you said, the philosophy of being off the grid?
Yeah, that's what, we now get into the meat and potatoes of what off the grid's about. When I went out to film off grid, I wasn't sure where the story was going to take us. We had an idea. We would do interviews, and like me, they weren't really all that interesting. Most of them, some of them did, had skills like I did. They knew how to build, and they just went out and did it. It wasn't that big a deal to them. I mean, was it fun doing it? Yeah, it was fun, but it's not something I wanted to explain to people how to do. But the conversation kept going back to, well, why did you choose to live off the grid? Some people were like me, just wanted to have a place in the woods. I didn't have a political agenda about it. But as we continued to interview people, we were interviewing people from far left perspectives, far right perspectives. And I had everything from preppers to guys who want the world to want to think that human beings are a blight on the planet, need to be eliminated from the planet, going off the grid. I interviewed a psychiatrist who was advocating for the end of human race.
Wow.
He said we're destroying the earth and we have no right to do it, and we need to be eliminated from the earth. What was one of the most interesting things about him is he was advocating for this, and he was talking about how everybody needs to drive electric cars. And I'm a proponent of electric cars. Don't get me wrong. I think, particularly if you live in Las Vegas and getting your power from Hoover Dam, it makes sense. But if you're hooking up to the power grid and it's a coal-powered plant and you're running your vehicle from a coal-powered plant, I don't really see the benefit there yet. But I certainly want to go down this road for renewables. I think you can't eliminate fossil fuels, but he was talking about, everybody should drive they should drive electric cars, and they should start trying to use more solar panels and quit using fossil fuel. And I'm not making this up. You can't even make up something like this. He drove up to the interview in a diesel Mercedes. I'm not joking. In a diesel Mercedes, and he's just ranting and raving. He's in off grid. He didn't talk. I was very kind to him in the editing process, but he was talking about how we all need to get, and I agree. But he owned 5 homes. 3 of them were off the grid, and 2 of them were city homes. One is just him, and he had a son who I believe was also. So why does he need 5 homes? I have 2. I'm fine with having 2. We have our place in Utah. We have our home here in Las Vegas. But why does anybody need 5 if you're advocating for the things he was doing? So that was interesting. Then on the other end, on the other end of the spectrum, preppers, people getting ready, building bunkers. There was a guy up in Utah who was building a big giant bunker. Underground bunker right next to his off-the-grid cabin. And, he's just, I just said, I'm just being prepared in case something crazy happens. I got the money. So I built this concrete dome bunker. It was made out of 6-inch thick thick concrete. And then he covered it in dirt, built big giant steel doors on it. It's like like something you see, in Colorado mountains, at NORAD. It was really interesting. Good guy and very successful guy. So he was civil engineer. He knew how to do all that stuff. So it was very interesting what he was building. And but a lot of the people I were interviewing were doctors. I was probably the least educated person that was in the film. I have quite a bit of college, but I didn't finish. I'm pretty educated, but I have 3 or 4 engineers, 3 or 4 doctors, one chemical engineer, one electrical engineer. One guy was a solar energy expert in Alaska who interviewed, and who I've gotten to be friends with. He's live far from him. A lot of these people that I interviewed are now friends of mine. Since I met them, we have so much in common. So their philosophy is to be prepared for in case the world gets crazy.
I think we're not far off it. the more you think about it, the more like I think maybe it comes with age. I don't know. The older I get, the more I think it's not actually that crazy of an idea to be prepared for everything. It does seem like we live in.
I mean, I have 25-year food stores. But and do we have a plan if things gets crazy in the world? What we would do here in Vegas we would certainly be heading to our place in Utah, which is in the middle of nowhere, to get away from it. But I think we're kind of center on, myself and my family kind of center on that subject. But I think it's always a good idea to have it because during COVID, the food shortages we had here in the United States was a big deal. I mean, the supply chain issues, and so a lot of people are that way. Some of the other people that I interviewed, and I was talking to one of the really good sources of information. So I interviewed 3 real estate brokers who were in the Kanab, Utah area, near so within 50 miles of my cabin. They had people calling up from all over the country during COVID and during the riots that were going on in up in Seattle and Portland, and all the craziness with all that, and the riots and all. People were really, really terrified. They looked at property in rural areas, and they were calling up these realtors and wanting to know whether you have any property for sale. And this was in the middle of the winter. And there's quite a bit of snow on the ground in 2020 when most of this was going on. They said, "Well, can we rent snowmobiles and go and sit in the middle of the winter?" So, no, we can't do that. And but there was there's been a run on off the grid property big time. Where my property is, I'm not going to tell you where it is, but I will tell you it's in the Bryce Canyon area, and there's the community where I am, there's 320-acre parcels where my property is located. And when I bought back in 2004, there were 3 out of the 300 lots, there was 150 of them for sale. Today, I know for a fact because I have, I have buddies that I've talked to all the time in Utah, that sell real estate and stuff, and they are. They're telling me that right now, 18 years ago, there was 150 lots, and that property had been around for 30 or 40 years. People just wouldn't buy it because it's so remote. Today, there's 1 lot to sell on that.
Oh, wow.
One. And it's absolutely a hole in the ground. Like entire 20 acres is nothing but a hole in the ground, and they're still trying to get top dollar for it. But property is going to quadrupled or more on where my property is. And that's true all over the country in all the off-grid places. There's a real shortage of this kind of property across the country. And I don't see that changing for the foreseeable future. So, yeah, people are scared and they want to have a place to go in case the cities disintegrate.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it also made people, with the COVID, it also made people realize, like, that is actually doable. All of that, you can't work from a distance. It's important to be, in the center of the city. It made us all realize that it's not only doable, not, just chasing that, but it's also actually nice, to have more nature around, to be a bit more detached from, all the screens and all that. So that's also a factor.
That's still my primary motivation. I like being around wildlife. There's bear, mountain lion, elk all around my place. And I've done a lot of long distance hiking in my life. I've been in bear country, and I have no fear of that. I'm not crazy, but I know they're there, but and I've come across bears in the woods, and they always run. I've never came across a mountain lion in the woods, though. That's not something I've come across yet. So, but elk, I'm probably more scared of the elk than I am the bear.
Yeah, that's funny. Yeah, I think people are less predictable than animals. So, like, if you would make a list, I think I'd be more scared of people than of animals.
I agree. You have to. It can be, yeah. Particularly in this day and age. I mean, when I was a kid, everybody always goes back and talks about what things wrong when they was a kid. But when I was a kid, I mean, the kind of stuff that goes on now, it just did. When I was a kid, I did the high school that I went to. We actually had a course called gun cleaning course on how to clean your gun. It was like a shop course, and we would, and when I was a kid growing up, I lived in a rural area of Mississippi. Hometown was about 42,000 people, and it was a very rural area. And we would during the fall is when it would be bird season, dove season, quail, or and squirrel season. And a lot of the guys like me, we would take our shotguns to school and put it. I had a pickup truck when I was in high school, and I put my shotgun in the gun rack and leave it in the truck. And nobody ever thought anything about it. This is in the early 1970s. And then during gun cleaning class, you would see students walking into the school with a shotgun in their hand, walking down the aisle to go to the class where they were going to instruct them on how to clean shotgun. Could you imagine that happening now?
Oh, wow. No, I mean, that would go horribly wrong. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they would be put in a mental institution until they were 50. Kids did that now. But it was nothing we even, just this kind of things didn't happen when I was a kid. The world was a much, chiller place, in the United States anyway. There was a certain part of the world, I'm sure it wasn't, but we didn't think anything about it. I mean, we thought, why would we do things any differently? But now, there was my wife is actually a school teacher here in Las Vegas, has been 21 years. She teaches at a middle school. She teaches 6th grade life science. And they had an emergency at school that a kid 38 took the Western Revolver to school. And they shut down the school. I mean, it was like the SWAT team came out. I mean, they would, everything was shut down. This happened only about 2 weeks at my wife's school. So, yeah, totally different world we live in today, particularly here in Vegas.
Yeah, I think it's everywhere. Well, let's just wrap up with we spoke about the film, and then you have quite a bit of experience with. You said you have even 2 more films in the making. What would be your advice to people who are just starting out and thinking about starting out in the film industry now?
I was very fortunate that I was able to meet Jack. And of course, I was older in life and had, I'm not a wealthy man, but I had money to put into the film. If you don't have any money and you just want to get involved with film, Jack, he actually has a degree in quantum physics that he got from, I forget the name of the university, but he's from New York. He's from New York State, right in the Ithaca area. And his name, I'll go ahead and tell you his name. Maybe you guys will get in touch with him. His name is Jack Schuyler. He's all IMDb pages everywhere, just like mine. Jack's had a very long history. But he, after he finished school and he did quite well in quantum physics, he realized that nobody's going to fund any of the things that I want to do in quantum physics. He said, I'll never be able to express myself the way I want to. So the next best thing for me quite literally, was to go into film so I can get this.
Wow.
He's a very, very creative guy. And so he actually moved out to L.A. and he couldn't get a job. So he finally met a guy on a movie set at one of the studios. And he actually convinced the guy to Jack said, I had some money saved up. So I said, I will pay you if you let me come on the set and let me just watch and you guys teach me and I will pay you like it's an internship, but I'm paying. So he had to pay for his first job on a Hollywood movie set that way. And he paid. And of course, his first job was, he was a cameraman. And that's how he got started. My path was much different. I was 63 or 64 when I decided I was going to start doing this. It's only been the last 2-3 years. And of course, it does help if you have money to get in film. At first I did everything. I was the cameraman. I was directing. I was producing. I was doing the sound, everything. And after Off the Grid, I decided I didn't want to do that. So I just produce films now, and I'm always looking for new stories. I'm working on a deal right now, trying to convince the guy to let us make a movie about his life. This guy who was a bank robber, and he got involved with the prison ministry in Pennsylvania. He got arrested in New York. He went to a federal penitentiary in Pennsylvania. Supposed to be in for 25 years. Got involved with prison ministry, and decided he was going to turn his life over to the Lord. And I'm not Bible thumping here, but this is the story. And I have my own belief system, but I'm not trying to push anything on anybody. But he decided that he had to turn his life around, and so he got out. He got out early, and as soon as he got out, he was very, very articulate, very, very smart man, and decided to start a prison ministry right here in Las Vegas, Nevada. And I'd rather not say his name, but he and I are working together on a prison ministry thing, and we're going to be doing an interview with him for Kairos the next 9 days. But we are going to have a discussion with him about we'd like to make a film about his life, like a Lifetime movie film about his life. It's a really, really super compelling, interesting story, and the success that he's achieved is remarkable. So I look for those kind of stories. But finding stories and finding funding, you got to find the interesting stories. You got to find something somebody's interested in viewing or learning about to make the film. But money's the big deal. You got to have the money. You don't have the money, you got to work your way through the ranks. So you might have to pay somebody to let you work. It's not easy.
Yeah, that was quite creative.
Yeah.
That was an interesting way.
Yeah, Jack was about 23, 24 when he did that in single, so he could do something like that. But I have 4 daughters and a wife. That's when I was young, I couldn't have done that. No.
Wonderful. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for joining us, and we'll include all the links to where people can reach out to you with their stories or with money.
Yeah, I'm not really shopping for money. If somebody wants to come to me with an idea, I'm happy to listen to it. We're moving people to know what it is I do, and I hope people will watch my movies. That's really what I hope to accomplish.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, Larry. It's been a pleasure.
So yeah, thank you very much for having me on.
Thank you for joining us in this episode of Smart Branding Podcast. Feel free to visit smartbranding.com for more information and reach out if you have any suggestions, questions, ideas, or just want to learn more about how a good domain name strategy can help you build a strong and successful brand. See you next time.